This is Nicole Trujillo. So I am the chair of the Summon Working Group, and it is my great pleasure to bring to you today's two very exciting topics on integration and interoperability with other products in Summon. So our first presentation is going to be on integrating a local art museum collection into Summon results, which will be given by Steve Brown, who's the e-resources access manager of the University of Colorado Boulder. And then our second presentation will be piecing together Summon over Alma documentation by James Day, who is the Electronic Services Librarian at Embry-Riddle, Aeronautical University. Before we get started with those presentations, I just wanted to do a brief reminder that this is the last webinar of the 2019-2020 series. If you want there to be a 2020-21 series, please keep coming up with those great ideas, sending them in, and letting us know what you think of this series. We also will be having in-person meetings at ILUNA 2020, so I hope you're thinking about or maybe making arrangements for that conference. And we'll also be sending out some emails about some surveys where you can give your opinion, ask your questions. We'll then present back at the conference, but then those slides will be available later. So you'll have more opportunity to interact with us and tell us what you think about Summon, about your representation with the product, and what we can do for you in the future. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Steve.
So I'm going to talk about integrating the CU Campus Art Museum's collection into our Summon results display. So we did this because our art and architecture librarian came to us and asked if it was possible, and he had these three goals in mind when he requested this service. He wanted to see increased visibility of the art collections that we have. He was hoping for one search as a true one-stop shop for information, and we're not there yet since the Campus Natural History Museum's information is difficult to work with Summon. We also have some archives collections and the resources that aren't indexed, so we're one step closer on that goal. And number three ties in a bit with number one, but we also wanted to have the discovery of locally accessible objects for study to make it easier for our students and staff to be able to find those objects. So the systems involved were Summon, obviously, and then the Art Museum is using the Argus Museum Collections Management software that's provided by Lucidia. So I'm going to go down the process that we went through next. It began with a lot of internal discussions. If your library is like ours, which I'm sure it is, something like this has to go through multiple committees, working groups, up to the management group level before it got approval. Everybody had very positive thoughts on this idea, so nobody was fighting this at all. Next was to reach out to the Art Museum, which there was already some discussion with the Art Museum manager, but since the Art Museum staff was going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting, since it's their data, we had to make sure that they were on board with this process. So they were going to be the ones exporting the data, doing a little bit of the massaging of the data, and sending it off to Summon support. So we really needed their buy-in and their help with this project. So it felt like, in many respects, I was more of a middleman in this process than really making it happen. The next step was to open tickets with both Summon and Argus. With Summon support, so we could figure out exactly how to do this since we've never done this before, and with Argus support for a side project for integration that I'll show you at the end. So we were starting our thoughts on how to do this from this Knowledge Center article on including your library's institutional repository. So this gave us some guidance as we were preparing to reach out to Summon. This article outlines your options as either an OAI PMH transfer or an FTP transfer. Because of the Argus system limitations, we had to go with the FTP option. So the next step in the process was doing a test load of about 500 records, just to make sure that nothing looked disastrous, everything looked okay. There were some issues with it, but we decided that it would be better to get the complete collection of about 9,000 records in before we really started to do intensive testing and trying to improve things. So the next step was getting that 9,000 records. That Summon support did some massaging of the data to make sure that it fit into Summon properly. We were using an Excel. They had requested that we do an XML format, and that was causing the issues for us. So we ended up with an Excel spreadsheet format that was being FTP'd to them. So they had to do some manipulation on their end to make it work. And then number 6 in the process was just doing a lot of testing. The testing was done by the e-resources team here at the library, the art and architecture librarian, and the art museum manager. So we had some different perspectives on how we were searching it, how we were testing it. So we were testing title searches, author searches, using the facets, searching for University of Colorado Art Museum, searching by the object ID codes that came over from Argus. And the results were mixed, but they were encouraging. And then the last step here was improvement based on the test results. So next I'm going to go through a few slides of some of the issues that we ran into and improvements that we were able to make. We weren't able to fix all of the issues, but a lot of them fixed. So the first issue was a big one, and this one was on the Argus side, where we had linking issues where each individual record in Summon was linking back to the front page of the Art Museum portal. So this was really not helping our users. Argus support team was able to correct this error. So we were able to move on from that one, but that would have probably shut down the project right there if we couldn't have gotten that one fixed. Next, we had, since we were working from an Excel spreadsheet format, when the data got over to Summon support, they found that our unique identifiers that we're using, which was that object ID, was being rounded. So this record's object ID of 79.796 was showing up in Summon as 80. So we had to take care of make the data work. Next issue, which was a limitation of the metadata that we were working with, is that the entire collection has content type of art. The Art Museum's collection has books, sculptures, paintings, a variety of content types, but due to the lack of granularity that we were receiving, everything is in our system as just art. Next, the sort by date function is never going to work for us. This display here is results sorted by date newest. If you sort by date oldest, it's the exact same display. And you can see it goes from 20th century, 1966 to no date, 18th century to 1937. It's another limitation of the data metadata that we're getting from the Art Museum. So it would take a lot of work in 9,000 records to make this workable. So that would require more staff to make that ever work. Next, I will admit that I let this one slip through the cracks until I was preparing for this presentation, but we had noticed originally that the pages showing up in our summon results were actually the dimensions of the artwork. So in this example of a coin, you can see that our pages are 0.74 inches and 0.01 pounds. So this is still showing up, and after this webinar, I'll see if I can get that updated at all. But for now, we have some very strange page numbering for our art resources. Another issue that Summon support was able to fix for us was that we had 532 results that didn't have titles. So they were able to update these as title unknown. So we have a lot of records that are just title unknown because that was another limitation of the metadata we work with. Another issue when we first started, the artists were not mapping to the author field. So this is another one that the Summon support team was awesome. They corrected so much of our metadata, so a big thank you to them on this. So they were able to map the artists to the author field so we could do searching. Another thing that they had done for us was creating a new library location as CU Art Museum. So that makes it really easy to limit to just this collection. This was another special feature that they had created for us. Number 9, so some of our art museum collection had images online and others did not. So we were able to have the ones that did not have any online images have the links relabeled as Czech Art Museum for availability instead of available online to help reduce confusion for our users. And then the last one, which was a pretty simple one, was just adding some extra tags to our database recommender. So you could find that collection and jump over to the Art Museum portal. So you could get into the front page of the Art Museum or wanted to see what local resources we have. If you want to play around with our collection in your instance of Summon, you can do a search for DVID:ZVYXZ, and then make sure that you click the Add Results Beyond Your Library's collection, just to make sure, because if you don't include that, then you'll get 0 results unless you happen to activate our Art Museum collection in your instance of Summon. So at the beginning, I also mentioned one other integration that we had done. So this was on the Argus side, where the Art Museum was already working on this before we really knew what was going on. But they were able to add a summon search within their Art Museum portal. So you could click from their collection over to the libraries, and then it would provide a link to the search that was done in Argus, and you could see the library results for the search that you had just done within. So that was probably limited to just something that if your campus art museum also uses Argus, it's something that you can do. I don't know if other systems can handle that, but it was a nice little added touch that they had done. And I guess questions will be at the end after James gets to present. So I'm going to pass this off to James. Thanks.
Hello, my name is James Day. My session is titled Piecing Together Summon over Alma Documentation. I'm an electronic services librarian at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida. And I'm also a member of the Summon Product Working Group. My library, the Jack R. Hunt Library, supports about 6,000 resident students, as well as 30,000 online students in our worldwide campus. We have used Summon, which we have branded Eagle Search, for over 10 years. Last year, we completed a migration from Ex Libris Voyager to Alma. We kept Summon, which became Summon over Alma. And the biggest challenge for me was moving from 360 Link to the built-in Alma link resolver. Most libraries today, when implementing Alma, also implement Primo as their discovery service. I understand that Ex Libris will not sell you Summon and Alma together as a package, and maybe Ella can correct me if I'm wrong on this later. Summon over Alma was developed to allow existing Summon users to adopt Alma without having to change their discovery service. This was the case with my library. By keeping Summon, we could convince our university that our migration from Voyager to Alma was a back-end upgrade. Also, there would also be less disruption to our library users who are already familiar with using Summon. Before our recent Alma migration, we were maintaining 3 systems of Voyager ILS, an Ex Libris 360 link resolver, and Summon. Summon over Alma reduced this to 2 systems, effectively combining the functionality of the OPAC for searching the collection, accessing user accounts, and item self-renewal with the link resolver for accessing our electronic resources. Since the subject of this customer session is integration and interoperability with other products, I'll talk a little bit about Alma Summon integration. While it's clear that Alma and Summon over Alma are 2 separate products, the Summon and Alma services interfaces do look less consistent than Summon and 360 Link do. They are integrated in a few important ways. Summon over Alma provides real-time availability for library holdings, a way to search and browse course reserves, menu links to journal search and citation linker pages, access to My Account pages to access your library account in Alma, and the publishing of library print, electronic, and digital holdings to Summon. I'll go into these in a little more detail about these 5 ways. Real-time availability. Summon over Alma provides real-time availability of physical items in your collection. In your Summon search results, you can instantly see whether that item, whether a book, journal, DVD, or other type, is available for checkout. Previously in Summon with Voyager, users saw the message check availability as a link to click through to the library catalog to find the item's status. Summon over Alma can truly be said to function as an OPAC. Course reserves. Summon over Alma integrates with Alma to allow users to search and browse course reserves. To do this, Summon uses an Alma API. That sounds difficult, but it's very easy to configure. During implementation or any time after, you simply get an API key from Ex Libris and enter it into the field in the Summon Administrative Course Reserves page. This adds a course reserve link at the top of the Summon page and adds a course reserves facet on the search results page if you enable this. Third is a journal search and citation linker. Summon over Alma provides a journal search and citation linker page accessible from a configurable menu in Summon. These are similar to the ones in 360 Link eJournal Portal, except they are built-in Alma services. Also, Summon over Alma provides access to your library account in Alma. You can view your items on loan, your requests, any fines and fees, and blocks and messages. If allowed, you can renew your items yourself. You can place and cancel requests yourself as well. Again, Summon over Alma functions as a self-service OPAC. And the final integration I'll talk about is the ability of Alma to publish library print, electronic, and digital holdings to Summon. Alma allows you to schedule jobs to publish Alma records to Summon daily. All right, for the second half of this talk, I'll discuss Summon over Alma documentation and some of the limitations of it we found as we went through our migration. If you have followed the library technology field over the past decade, you'll know that Summon and 360 Link were developed by Serial Solutions, which was purchased by ProQuest in 2011. Ex Libris already had their own discovery service, Primo. Alma was developed with Primo in mind as its public interface. But the developers at Ex Libris did a very good job of integrating Alma and Summon. However, the Alma documentation hasn't been fully updated to reflect that Alma customers might be running Summon instead of Primo or Primo V. During my library's implementation of Alma over the course of 2019, I frequently came across instances where the Alma documentation gave instructions for Primo, but not for Summon. Sometimes the configurations apply to Summon, but mostly they do not. Much of the implementation information was consolidated into a single guide titled Alma Summon Integration. It's a very useful guide, however, it is not complete. During our implementation, I found useful information in sometimes surprising places. For example, there are 3 training videos for Summon over Alma, and each video has a corresponding handout with useful Summon over Alma information, but they're not obvious, and they're difficult to find unless you know where they are. During our Alma migration, I was looking for information so often at the various Ex Libris sites that I created an Ex Libris search page, which you can see here. It's located at library.eriu.edu/EL search. This is essentially a Google custom search engine that searches the 3 Ex Libris sites listed there on the screen. If you perform a search for the actual product name Summon over Alma, you get very few results. One of those is simply a list of Summon over Alma instances I compiled during our migration. If you search for those same words without the quotes, you will get a few more results, but still not the Alma Summon integration guide on the first page or 2 of results. If you go over to the Ex Libris Customer Knowledge Center and select Summon as the product and search for Summon over Alma with no quotes, you will not find the Alma Summon integration guide. However, if you select Alma as a product and do the same search, yeah, you will see the Alma Summon integration guide as the first result. So I'll give you 3 examples where Alma documentation did not provide instructions for Summon over Alma users. First example is with the Journals by Category feature. The Summon over Alma journal search page has an optional feature to browse journals by category on the left side of the screen. This feature wasn't enabled by default for us, but I saw it on a few other Alma instances during my search, and we decided that we wanted this feature. Searching the Ex Libris documentation for Summon journals by category gave me 0 results. Searching for Alma journals by category gave me 3 results, the closest relevant result being for Primo VE. Now, sometimes Primo instructions work for Summon, so I selected the Configuring Journal Search for Primo VE product documentation page. Following the Browsing Journals by Category instructions, you'll find they refer to a tab that doesn't exist, which contains a crucial checkbox that can't be accessed. We learned from our implementation team that for Summon, you must simply enable and schedule a Creates Journal Categories file job to make the Journals by Category list display. During my search for other Summon over Alma instances, I found many institutions that did not have this feature enabled, and I wondered why that was, and if it was because they couldn't figure out how to enable it. But if you don't have that turned on and you want it, now you know how to do it. Second example is Alma code tables. Most of the wording on the Alma services pages can be customized. This is done by editing the labels located in Alma code tables. This is an instance where there is documentation for Summon over Alma users. However, the list of relevant code tables is missing at least 4 relevant tables. And you can see those 4 tables on the slide. And my third example is with the Alma help pages. On many screens, when you're inside of Alma, there is a help for this page link in the top right-hand corner of the screen that takes you to an online help document. Nearly all of these help pages assume that you are running Primo, and the Summon customer is left guessing if the instructions apply. They often do, but sometimes you'll reach a step that doesn't match with your Summon over Alma setup. For example, if you're on the Alma configuration, fulfillment, discovery interface display logic, general electronic services page inside Alma, and use the help for this page link, you will go to the discovery interface display logic online help page, at the Configuration General Electronic Services section. And if all that didn't make any sense, the basic point is that you end up on this service page that says this section only applies to Primo, and with a link also configuring services for Primo VE, but not Summon. There is a guide called Adding a Delivery-Related General Electronic Services help page, but you would have to go into the Knowledge Center and find it for yourself. So what can be done with the documentation for Summon over Alma? I brought this problem up with the Summon Product Working Group in the December 2019 meeting. Other members agree that Alma and Summon over Alma documentation was often confusing. So I was tasked with starting supplemental Summon over Alma documentation, and we came up with a few solutions. For the Alma online help pages I mentioned, there isn't anything the working group can do other than to note the problem pages and submit the list to Ex Libris. Most of the solution would be to add a few words noting that the instructions apply to Primo and Summon, or to link to instructions for Summon over Alma where different, and we'll do that. The same applies to the Alma code tables. We can alert Ex Libris to which additional code tables are relevant to Summon over Alma, and we'll do that as well. Finally, we will create and post supplemental configuration and customization guides for Summon over Alma to the Ex Libris Customer Knowledge Center. And my proposal there was to start at the public Summon over Alma pages, in the Alma services pages, and work back to where the documentation is, or should be, to configure that page or that section or that element in the documentation. So if you are a Summon over Alma customer and want to contribute to the project, please contact me. Thanks.
Well, thank you, James. Now we're going to turn it over to questions. So if you would please enter in any questions you have.
Here's a question. Summon over Alma documentation, what is the timeline for this work to be done?
This is James. Well, it's just begun. I started putting together some of the draft pages, and we'll probably roll them out as we finish them. We'll do each page one by one. We'll probably start with the journal search page and the linker pages because they're pretty simple, and then we'll move on to the Alma services page because that's pretty detailed. And I don't know, you may start seeing them in the next few weeks. It's going to take us longer to create a list of pages for Ex Libris that need to be updated for Summon over Alma.
And James, do you find that the journals by category feature works for you?
We haven't had any complaints about it. It seems to work pretty well. We weren't changing any of the categories, although that's possible, but we were pulling our hair out trying to figure out how to enable it because the documentation said that you needed to find this tab under the view that you're using and then, check the checkbox, and we didn't have that checkbox. So.
And I received a question for Steve. Did the integration of Art Museum increase interest and use?
Oh yeah, I forgot that I had a note here on our usage. Let me look at that here. So this implementation went live last fall, and so for the past 7 months, which goes back beyond when we started, the CU Art Museum facet has been selected 68 times. In 20 different sessions. I'm guessing a lot of that is our art and architecture librarian showing it off to students in his classes. But I'm not really sure how much it's being used across campus and by museum users so far, but hopefully we'll see an uptick in that. But those are some encouraging statistics for a relatively hidden collection of 9,000 records in our instance of Summon.
That's great. The request was if you could send updates through the listserv and let people know how things are going. One other question, Steve, was how were you able to get your local art museum database code added to Alma?
The object ID, that that type of search ultimately didn't work, but that was what was used as the unique identifier for the linking process. So unfortunately, you can't do the object ID search, but it is being used as an important piece for making the connection.
So Brent, who's the product manager for Summon and Summon over Alma, says we should have some updates about documentation for SOA by the end of February, and we'll keep you all posted on the listserv.
Yeah, the purpose of this project is really to help Ex Libris and to help other Summon over Alma customers with their documentations.
But at this time, there are no questions on the chat.
Okay, well, I think then that's all we have for today. Thank you again so much, everyone, for joining us. If you have further questions or just want to reach out to the group, I provided the emails with presenters on the screen. And thank you again for coming.